Thank you, Nancy, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, and I really appreciated the invitation to come to the chamber and give an update on some of the things we're working on, hopefully with all of you, and working together. But let me begin by just making a really important pitch to all of you, because believe it or not, it doesn't always happen, is that whenever you have issues with the federal agencies, as a company, as individuals, the VA, IRS, Social Security, please reach out to my team. This is a big part of what we do, and you'd be amazed at how many people we go to and like, oh, Senator, we didn't want to bug you. You're not bugging us. This is what we do. So please do that. By the way, I do want to just mention I have an entire team from my office who are based back in DC, who are here. So if you can, when I call you out, and if I miss somebody, let me know. Larry Burton, my chief of staff's here. So Larry's here. Adam Trombley's my state director. Amanda Coyne, some of you know Amanda, has done a great job for me as a communications director. Same with Michael Sukup, a local Anchorage boy. Erin Johnson, is Erin here? I heard she was going to be here. There she is. Oh, there's Erin, who also does a great job. Avery Fogels, another one. So we have a really good team here, but my biggest message to all of you is use us, right? We're here to help. We work for you, and that is our philosophy, and we hope you take advantage of this. So, you know, like I said, I'm very honored to be here. And I want to begin by thanking all of you. I think our business leaders, our entrepreneurs who do so much in terms of employing people, working hard, literally the backbone of Anchorage, the backbone of Alaska, the backbone of America, I don't think you get the credit you deserve. So how about a round of applause for all the great work that you guys are doing? And our goal is to try to provide opportunity for all of you and help you thrive. Certainly, one of the things I'm going to talk about is kind of this idea when you're talking about regulations and approaches to Alaska. One size does not fit all at all. I just got done. I'm home for what we call our August work period. It used to be called August recess, and then people are like, well, it sounds like you guys aren't doing anything, so we renamed it August work period, okay? So, but we do get out, and it's great, right? It's a great opportunity for my team and I to get out. Just in the last about 10 days, I've been out Juneau, Fairbanks, Delta Junction, Glen Allen, Golcana, Valdez, Whittier, St. Paul, Niwixit, Kotzebue, and then heading to the Kenai tomorrow. So, and it's great because we just do town hall meetings in every venue, and we get to hear, hey, what's happening? What are the good things? What are the challenging things? As I mentioned to Nancy, so it's really interesting. Some of the themes that come back are very similar, regardless of where you are, and I'll talk about a few of those. So, look, it's just it's such an honor to be back home and to be with everybody here. You know, there's so many more things, in my view, that bind us as Alaskans. Our fierce love of our state, our country, our tenacity, our grit, and our uniqueness. And we really are unique, certainly more than a lot of the places in the lower 48. So what I wanted to do was today just go through some challenges that we're facing, opportunities that we have, and kind of interweave that with some of the things that we're doing in Washington, D.C., and then hopefully have some time to take some questions. But, you know, I don't think there's any sugarcoating it. We have a lot of challenges in our state, a lot of challenges in our country, challenges with regard to fentanyl, which is something we've been very focused on. We have a handout there on a campaign that we've been working on that. The youth mental health challenges that are happening right now, inflation. When I'm home, I'm the guy who does the grocery shopping in our family, and you know, I'm always just shocked at how much it costs to go to the grocery store now. And then certainly, and I'll talk at the very end, some national security challenges. But I would say that one of the biggest challenges facing our state right now is depicted in this handout that I have here that's on your table. It's what we refer to as the Last Frontier Lockup. And this is a chart that shows the, right now, 66 executive orders and executive actions from the Biden administration that are singularly focused on Alaska. These are not broad kind of executive orders that impact the whole country and impact us. These are only focused 100% on our state. And it is a big challenge. This hits every region. If you look at the map, every industry. And this is something that is a really big challenge. I have personally given this to the President of the United States, President Biden, in the Oval Office, saying, Mr. President, with all due respect, come on, this is not right. You know, and if a Republican administration came in and issued 66 executive orders against little Delaware, and you were still the senator, you would be on the Senate floor raising hell every day. And that's what I'm trying to do. So this is a big challenge. And we're working through it, and I'll talk about how we are. So, look, I didn't want to start the speech depressing all of you by going through all the challenges, but they're there. So, how do we deal with these? How do we overcome these? And I think, in many ways, it's what all of you do, which is this is an organization, the Chamber, that looks at issues and tries to unify us as Alaskans. And I think that's the best way that we get through a lot of these challenges, to look at them, recognize what they are, and then work together to overcome them. And I'm going to give a shout out to ConocoPhillips, who I'm seeing here at the front of the lunch today. But the one example where we've done this really, really well in the last couple of years is on the Willow Project. This is something that literally brought together the entire state of Alaska, you name it, people from all over the state, of course businesses, but unions, different city councils. We had a resolution from Ketchikan on the importance of the Willow Project. Our state legislature unanimously passing resolutions. This was all of us working together, and the odds were quite significant. We were fighting literally an organized army on this project. You may have noticed every single newspaper editorial page in the country was against this project. Nearly every lower 48 environmental group, 300 million TikTok users. Go figure. I mean, that literally happened. Patagonia, literally the whole darn company. I mean, it was on and on and on. Most of the Biden White House, certainly the Secretary of Interior, and again, we overcame that. And as you guys know, that is going to be really, really important for our state. And I again want to thank everybody from the legislature, different communities, Conoco, of course, a really good job, but a really good example of, hey, when we have something big, and this is big, when you talk about the investments, when you talk about the economic impacts, this is going to be positive for our entire state. When we work together on these kind of things, even when the odds are very much stacked against us, we can get really, really big, important things done, like we just did on this. So I always mention, the Conoco team has heard this a little bit. I was actually, last year around this time, I was in Lithuania at the NATO summit with a bipartisan group of senators, and President Biden was there, his Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. So we met with him and met with a bunch of world leaders at this NATO summit, and the President kind of pulled me aside and said, you know, Dan, this Willow project, right? Because he made the decision to reapprove what the Trump administration had already done. Had a lot of pressure to not do that. And he said to me, you know, this has kind of been tough on me, right? I'm taking a lot of criticism on that. Well, Mr. President, sorry about that, but you did the right thing for Alaska, for America. He said, you know, my cat was named Willow. My cat actually, I did know that your cat was named Willow. And he goes, well, this has been so tough, in our world in the White House. I've actually had to rename my cat because I don't want to hear Willow anymore in the White House. I'm like, well, I'm really sorry about that. You did the right thing, Mr. President, but what did you rename your cat? I renamed him Tom. All right, so we got the Tomcat. So that was another outcome of the Willow work that we did. The president has a new name for his cat. And so, again, I think working together, we can set an example and then show others. And we just did that last week. The governor, Congressman Peltola, and I took some members of the House Natural Resources Committee who were in Alaska. Conoco hosted them. We went to Nuiqsut, but we saw everything. And these members of Congress were blown away. They just had no idea, right? They're used to like Texas oil field or the drill rig every 2 feet. And they saw just the spread out, the highest environmental standards in the world, which we have right here, bar none. It's not even a close call. So this is really exciting. And it's not just in terms of getting things done, an exciting time with regard to Willow. When you look out, and I know there's, again, a lot of challenges, but we have the Pitka investment that's on state land that's happening. We have our infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure bill that Senator Murkowski and Congressman Young and I supported that has enormous amounts of resources for our state in terms of broadband, in terms of roads, bridges, ports. I like to always say we are a resource-rich, infrastructure-poor state. And if there is an infrastructure bill in the Congress, I think your delegation almost always supports it. I like to cite this statistic. We have less road miles in Connecticut, and we are 120 times bigger. Trust me, I tell the Connecticut senators that all the time. But FAA reauthorization, we just got that done. That's going to be great for our aviation sector. Again, on some of these infrastructure projects that we've been talking about for years, a strategic Arctic port at Nome, the Barrow Seawall and up in Utqiagvik, the Seward Lowell Creek project. These are giant resource infrastructure projects that we're not talking about anymore. We're doing them. We're doing them. And in addition to that, I just hosted the Commandant of the Coast Guard in Alaska the last couple days. We are now going to home port an icebreaker, commercially available icebreaker in Juneau. That's going to be a huge investment and builds on the big capital investments we brought. Yes. It's about time, right? I mean, we've had these icebreakers down in Seattle. I'm like, wait, why are the icebreakers in Seattle? They're 2,500 miles away from the ice. And we need them here. So we're finally getting one. It's going to happen. That's going to be big opportunities. We've done a big recapitalization of our fleet in Alaska. We've had about $600 million in infrastructure spending. And of course, we are continuing to build up our military. Just this, like two months ago, we passed the National Defense Authorization Act. And that'll have another $800 million just this year in infrastructure military construction in Alaska, $800 million. So these are things that, by the way, in terms of businesses, all that infrastructure dollars, I've had a kind of informal agreement with the Corps of Engineers. They let all these contracts on all the infrastructure projects in Alaska. In the informal agreement, which I've talked very publicly about, their goal should be 90% of that infrastructure money, and it's in the billions, 90% here, stays here. Your businesses, your contractors, our workers, right? And so I always make this offer. We've done it dozens of times. If you want to get a meeting with the Corps of Engineers here in Alaska and say, hey, here's what my company does, here's what my contractors do, here's what our union does, we will set that up, right? Because we want that money to stay here. And by the way, that's not some kind of boondoggle for Alaska. We do it better than anybody else, right? In terms of military construction that's happening. So take us up on that. We are certainly here to have Alaskans take advantage of that. It's, of course, really important for our national security. But we're thinking just those projects that I mentioned, in terms of private sector, in terms of federal dollars, infrastructure, military construction, Coast Guard construction, next 4 to 5 years, we will probably see easily north of $25 billion for investments in our state. And this isn't, we're not just like, this isn't pie in the sky. Willow's happening, right? The Portanome's happening. The Icebreaker in Juneau's happening, right? The $800 million in this year's NDAA is happening, right? And so we want all of you to be able to take advantage of it. Of course, we want Alaskan workers to be the ones that get these jobs. And so this is something we've been working on with the apprenticeship program, with our building trades. The University of Alaska does a great job in terms of providing affordable education. By the way, I got this from Governor Parnell, 80% of Alaskans who graduate from the university system stay in Alaska. We want those workers here for these great opportunities. And of course, one of the other choke points when we're looking at all this investment that we have in our state is a giant choke point, by the way, in every single community. Anchorage, Fairbanks, St. Paul, Kodiak, housing. Affordable housing. It is the choke point issue in so many places in our state. So some of you might remember, and I think we had a lot of people from the chamber last year. I hosted the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development here in Anchorage and then around the state. This was last August, and she'd never been here. You know, they didn't know a lot about Alaskan housing issues, so we got them to commit to an Alaska-specific task force from HUD. And, you know, HUD, think about it, housing, urban development. They don't know a lot about rural places like our state. So we are working on that, having the follow-up with HUD on that. By the way, the Mayor Bronson and our Anchorage Assembly did a really good job of kind of coming to me saying, hey, the other thing is on homelessness, which is a huge challenge, HUD is providing a formula that favors big cities in the lower 48 and disadvantages us. So we pressed them a lot in that regard, pressed her a lot, saying, hey, we need a formula that helps us. We got a homeless problem right here in Anchorage. How come we're not getting any of the big federal dollars? We're going to Houston and all these other places. So we are working on that. And then I introduced legislation with Senator Ron Wyden. He's a Democrat from Oregon. Now, why is he important? He's the current chair of the Finance Committee in the Senate, so a very important guy. And he reached out to me and said, hey, Dan, I got this big idea on housing that I think can really help. So we worked with him. We kind of Alaskanized the bill. We put a bunch of good stuff in there for Alaska. But it goes to this issue of we've had a very successful program since the 80s, which is the low-income housing tax credits. Right, which our builders can build low-income housing stock. And Senator Wyden and I are like, well, why don't we take that up a notch? Why don't we make that so builders can build that for middle-class jobs and middle-class employees? So firemen, police, teachers, healthcare workers who don't really qualify right now. So that's what our bill does. We introduced it a couple months ago. It's got a lot of good reviews, conservatives, liberals in our state. It was really, really supported across a broad spectrum of different groups. So next year, I think we're going to be doing a lot in terms of tax reform. And this is going to be a really good opportunity, we think, to kind of take a strategic approach to the big challenge of housing. Let me hit on a couple other issues before I turn to taking questions or comments from all of you. But I did want to mention one that it doesn't always get the press in Anchorage, but it is a really big challenge for our state right now, and that is the challenge of our fisheries throughout our state. A really big challenge. You all know that fish is in Alaska's DNA. As Nancy mentioned, I'm on the Commerce Committee. We have oversight of fisheries for the country. And, you know, I always like to brag on that committee. We are the superpower of seafood. Alaska, more than 2/3 of all seafood harvested in America comes from our waters. Over 2/3. A lot of people don't know that. The senators on the Commerce Committee know that because I say it all the time. But we've had a huge challenge in terms of the coastal communities that support our commercial fishing industry. They are literally in a Great Depression. People going out, businesses going out of business, big challenges. I hosted a meeting with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, with a bunch of our leaders in our coastal communities, some of our fishermen, some of our fishing groups, to say to the Secretary of Commerce, hey, Madam Secretary, we have a huge problem right now. And oh, by the way, you are the person in charge for fisheries. We need your help. So we had this strategy document that we provided her. She seems to be all in to help us. But one of the areas where we are making progress, and it was a big challenge, and some of you may have read about it, is with regard to Russia. The Russian fishing fleet is huge. They often kind of come into our waters. And 10 years ago, they blocked any American exports, any Alaskan exports into Russia. Okay, so a huge market of ours was closed off for 10 years. We have not been able to export one fish to Russia. So I have been, when it was Obama, Trump, Biden, going to their senior people, going, this is completely unfair. Why aren't we cutting off Russian imports into America? They cut it all off to us. So we've been working on this for 9 years. And it literally took a war, the Ukraine invasion by Russia, where I went to the White House saying, hey, you're going to put sanctions on Russia? Here's a great opportunity to stop them from importing seafood into our market because they are flooding global markets and crashing prices. And the Russians have literally said publicly, we know we are at war with the American seafood industry. Well, when they say that, that means us. When they say that, we got to fight back. So what we were able to do, I worked with the Biden administration on getting that ban. We blocked all Russian seafood imports into the United States. You may have heard about this little loophole. Then they sent it all to China, and we're shipping it back into our markets. We shut down that loophole. This took years. And I'm always saying, look, you know, Americans need to eat freedom Alaska fish, not Chinese, communist, Russian dictator fish, right? I mean, this is really important. And so now we're going on offense. I gave the Biden White House some language to put in the G7 summit to get the rest of the G7 to ban Russian imports. I had a meeting with Secretary Trudeau of Canada recently. I pressed him hard. Hey, the Canadians, they're blocked from exporting to Russia. Work with us, right? I met with the EU trade minister. They're looking to block. So we are trying to get a coalition going on offense to block Russian seafood everywhere. I mean, they have an unsustainable fishery. It's really hurting our communities. I mean, really hurting. So we're fighting back, going on offense. And so stay tuned on that. That's going to be a longer one. Let me just mention a couple other ones on fisheries. All over the state, we've had this kind of best of times, worst of times when it comes to salmon. Certain parts of our state, think Bristol Bay, Sockeye, salmon has been doing really good, really strong runs. And then other parts, Yukon Kings, Kuskokwim Kings, Kenai Kings, it's been a disaster. And of course, this hurts food security. It hurts our native communities. It hurts the culture in which so many, particularly of our interior and western Alaska Native communities, rely on this, not just for food, but for their own culture. So about a year and a half ago, I passed legislation called the Alaska Salmon Research Task Force Act. That's a long name, but the whole point was saying we're going to bring the best minds together in the world, state, federal, tribal, university, 99% of which reside right in our state. And we're going to get everybody together and say, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why is it really good some places, really bad in others? And I'm proud to say this Alaska Salmon Research Task Force report just came out like 2 weeks ago. It's really good. We're going to do a press conference on it. It's the beginning. It says, hey, this is what we think are some of the problems. These are the research areas that we need to work on. But it's something that, again, unites us, right? Who doesn't want strong, healthy salmon runs in Alaska? We all do. So this is the beginning of wisdom, right? Where we're trying to get the smartest people in the world to say, here's where we need to focus. So this just came out. We're going to try and get the word out on it. It's got a lot of good ideas, some of the smartest people in the world. There's strong focus on indigenous knowledge too, traditional knowledge. And, I'm proud of my wife. Some of you know her family has a fish camp up on the Yukon. And this idea, the whole idea came from my wife, Julie, right? On the bill and the report. And so, anyways, so those are some of the challenges with regard to our fisheries. I'll just mention one final one. We're trying to do something big and new with regard to our fisheries. And it's this. Right now, the Congress is writing the Farm Bill. Every 5 years, they do a big bill that relates to our farmers, who we all love. We got great farmers here in Alaska. But I introduced legislation called the National Seafood Supply Act. And the whole point of this is to say, now wait a minute. Our farmers have really good programs from the federal government that can help. They help get loans. They have crop insurance. They have relief when foreign overseas markets are closed. And there's a bunch of things that are completely analogous to fishermen, right? Like if you have a bad year in terms of weather or climate and your fishing has been bad, how come we don't get crop insurance? How come we don't get support for overseas markets? So what I'm trying to do here is to say this is very analogous, right? We need a new office in the Department of Agriculture to support fishermen in America, just like we love our farmers. So a lot of people in the farming community don't like this, but we're going to try. And we think it's a good idea, and we think we're making the case on that. So stay tuned on that one. And then finally, let me just conclude with a couple longer-term challenges I think we're starting to make progress on, and we could have huge opportunities, again, if we're working together. The first one, I already mentioned it, but it's a topic I've learned a lot about in this job, and it's very concerning, and it's youth mental health. And when you look at some of the statistics that come from the CDC and other things, you see this giant, and it is really alarming, rates of depression and suicide among young Americans, among young Alaskans, especially among young women, young girls. The CDC did a study last year that said they estimate up to 1/3 of all women, I think from 18 to 25, were reported being depressed and thought about taking their own life. 1/3 in America. Like, if that's not a crisis, I don't know what a crisis is. So we've been working a lot on this. It's a very complex issue, but one of the things that I'm sure of, and I'm pretty sure most of you are sure of, is that the big tech companies and being online and what they do with their algorithms is not helpful. It isn't. And there's been a ton of research on this. Their business model is to get kids to look at a phone for 10 hours a day and direct them to places that are unhealthy. So we just passed, and this is a bill I've been working on for a year and a half. I was one of the original co-sponsors. It was called the Kids Online Safety Act. Just passed that 3 weeks ago in the Senate. And it took a long time because the big tech companies hate this bill. And here's the good news. Over 90 United States senators voted for this. Right? So it's time. It's time. This is a beginning. It's not going to solve everything, but what it does, it is giving parents much more tools to be involved, to understand how they can better manage their kids' online activity. Which is parents, I have 3 daughters. This is really hard work. Everybody says, oh, mom and dad, you go figure it out. Yeah, that's not so easy, particularly when these companies try to hide it. So we're going to do a lot more on this, but it's a good first step. Second, and I don't have to tell all of you as business leaders in this part of our state, is our energy challenges. They're big. They're very significant. And particularly here in South Central, the good news is, we've been here before. Some might remember in 2011 when we were facing looming natural gas shortages in Cook Inlet. We practiced brownouts. We were doing all kinds of things like that. And then we took action, right? The legislature had the Cook Inlet Recovery Act, passed 60-0, by the way. I was at DNR at the time. We came up with a plan with our legislature to really try and address this. And we were able to move that kind of day of reckoning on gas for South Central to the left for about a decade on trying to make sure the federal side on a gas project, an LNG project for our state, which I think we need, has huge federal support. You may have seen in the infrastructure bill, we got federal loan guarantees for that project, up to $30 billion. We index them to inflation. We got all the permits, we got the FERC license, and I have been going over to Japan and Korea because I think we have an opportunity to get them interested. As a matter of fact, I'm heading back to Japan and Korea next week for my 4th trip there. These countries want to get off Russian oil and gas. They do. They have to in the aftermath of the invasion of Ukraine, and they are looking here. They are looking here. And this isn't just the lower level bureaucrats. I've met with the presidents of these countries, the prime ministers of these countries. So we have to all work together on this. But my view, the long-term solution for our energy challenges cannot be importing LNG from Canada or corrupt regimes like Mexico. We need to solve Alaska's energy challenges with Alaska Energy. And we can do that. We can do it. So I'll just end with one final kind of vision that I think is already starting to happen, but it's exciting. I think there's never been more focus, I've seen it in Washington, D.C., on the economic, environmental, and security issues that relate to the Arctic. Finally, people are waking up. Like, whoa, we're an Arctic nation. Whoa, we're an Arctic nation because of Alaska. And there's a lot that's happening. So one thing that I've tried to work with our legislature on is kind of laying out a vision where Alaska is the intellectual hub of research and action in so many critical areas that make us unique, particularly as it relates to our status as America's Arctic state. And think about it. It's our boundless renewable energy, our unique strategic location, our vast minerals and natural resources, and this is starting to become a reality. What do I mean by that? The University of Alaska is doing its part, pulling over almost $230 million in research in the past year. That was the all-time record for their federal research. The Department of Defense's Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies is now up and running at JBER with over 40 excellent professionals there. That was a bill Senator Murkowski and I worked on for many years. That's finally happening. DOD, not to be outdone by DOD, last year, and again, the congressional delegation was working hard on that. The Department of Homeland Security announced almost a $50 million grant to UAA to focus on critical Arctic security issues. And then in terms of environmental research, we finally have the NOAA research vessel, the Fairweather, back home ported in Ketchikan. That's something I've been working on for 10 years. We finally got that done. And then I had legislation a couple years ago called the Save Our Seas Act 2.0, the biggest, most comprehensive ocean cleanup legislation that ever came out of the Congress. And one of the things it had was a congressionally chartered foundation for public and private sector innovation on marine debris. How you clean up the oceans, how you have technology to keep our oceans clean. This foundation could be huge. For 2 years, I was saying to the board, you gotta home port that in Alaska. We got more coastline than the rest of the lower 48 combined. The Marine Debris Foundation needs to be home ported here. And just about 5 months ago, the board for this new foundation announced that they're gonna home port that in Alaska. In Juneau, sorry, Anchorage, but it's still great, right? This is another great opportunity to have all of these things that are kind of the intellectual founding of what we represent to the country be here. And again, we're not just talking about it anymore. This is happening. It's happening. And it's exciting. And in conjunction with that, we must continue progress on Alaska's critically important role in defending our nation during these very dangerous times. You have dictators, the dictatorships of the world, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. They're all working together. They're promoting their interests very aggressively. They're invading their democratic neighbors directly or through their proxies. And we are on the front lines in this new era of authoritarian aggression. Think about it, it's very similar, in my view, to the late 1930s, where all the dictators are working together and they're moving out. And our fellow Alaskans, I can tell you, know that we're on the front lines. As I mentioned, I went to 10 communities, 10 days, and we did town halls like this. Every single community, I got this question. What are we doing about this more aggressive joint Chinese-Russian activity in our waters and in our air? Alaska, what are we doing, Senator? That's from every Alaskan, every community. And a huge part of my job is to continue to make sure people in the lower 48 know how important we are. It's pretty obvious given what's been happening. And to bring senior military, both uniform and civilian officials up to Alaska and just say, look, here's what we're doing. We need more of you guys. So just in the last 2 weeks, I hosted the Commandant of the Coast Guard. I hosted the Chief of Naval Operations. So that's the top Navy official, uniform military, top admiral. I hosted 5 Marine generals. You know, I love the Marine Corps, but those guys are kind of the last guys to get how important we are. So I said, hey, generals, get up here. We need more Marines in Alaska, for goodness sakes. But this is a never-ending part of our education process that we do. Even when you think these admirals and generals know a lot, they don't always know a lot. And so what we need to do is bring them up here and educate them. So I think that is a really important part, again, of a future that is bright for us in many ways, even though it's a challenging time. So thank you again. Appreciate all the great work, again, that all of you are doing. Again, I think we got a lot of challenges, no doubt, but I think the opportunities far outweigh those if we're working together, and I think we have some good evidence of that happening. Thanks very much.